Hi, folks. Welcome to the ICC Men's T20 World Cup Show 2026. We've got a packed episode lined up today as we break down, three very intriguing matches from the T20 World Cup itself, right? Day one witnessed, moments of control, moments of chaos, and plenty of talking points along the way. Pakistan had a very nervy opening, against Netherlands. West Indies flexed their power against Scotland, and finally, India navigated a very tricky group, stage game versus the USA. So we'll obviously, be talking about all of our major takeaways, first impressions, turning points, and everything. For all the folks who have joined us in the live chat, please keep your questions and comments coming in. We will, obviously address it and keep the conversation going. And first things first, welcome Abhinav. Really happy to have you back here again. Let's probably get your thoughts on the not double header, triple header from yesterday itself. And did it keep you hooked on Saturday?
Hey, hi Neha, good to be back. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty engaging to say the least. I mean, three games with very different, uh, with different contexts and everything, and different conditions as well. I mean, and very exciting. Nearly there moments for each of the associate nations that were involved. And yeah, I mean, a pretty intriguing day one of proceedings in the T20 World Cup, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think the broadcaster too was having fun with it, right? I think they were talking about certain matches having the potential of an upset, of 300 alerts, and all of that getting breached. But probably let's start off with match one itself, right? Pakistan versus Netherlands. Again, Abhinav, your first impressions on the game itself, like it would be fair to say, right? It was a fairly scrappy opening for Pakistan, but Netherlands too, right? Kind of putting in that sort of a statement performance despite the result itself.
Uh, Netherlands have always been a very tricky team to face up in the recent few years. I mean, they've not made it easy for for any full member nation to just walk over them in especially in this format. I mean, we all saw what they did in the 2022 T20 World Cup. I mean, I think they ran Pakistan pretty close in that World Cup too, as well as and they beat South Africa, which was a huge and so they had already uh, shown what they're capable of. And this time, I think again they took Pakistan to the very edge. And I mean, look, Pakistan did a very Pakistan thing. I mean, screwing up routine chases and somehow managing to find to extricate yourself from a Gordian knot. I mean, uh, that's something Pakistan does very often. Many a times they fail at it, but there are occasions that they pull through, and I think they have to. Pakistan has Maxwell out to thank for that. I think had it not been for him shanking that catch down, I think it would have been. I mean, the result would have been a little different. I think Netherlands probably would have been in a better position at that stage to dictate terms. But yes, I mean, ifs and buts don't work in cricket, do they?
Unfortunately, they don't, right? I think yesterday's game itself sort of gave us that indication. But let's probably microscopically look at Netherlands' innings itself, right? Now, did you think they batted well enough? It was a slightly tricky Colombo surface itself. I think the commentators were constantly mentioning there's a lot of grass in the pitch. And even the regular loss of wickets didn't really help them as much, right? You couldn't even like pick out one defining partnership. It was just like a string of performances that helped them get to like that 140 odd itself. So, how would you sort of look at Netherlands' batting effort?
Very odd innings, but yeah, I mean, it's also the fact that they were playing at the Sinhalese Sports Club ground in Colombo, and the Sinhalese Sports Club ground, I don't think have hosted a lot of T20 internationals earlier. Plus, this I mean, because especially because it the venue until recently, I think until last year, wasn't a floodlit venue, so they anyways didn't have too many T20s scheduled over there. So yeah, I mean, and this is a relatively early morning start as one would say. I think it is a 10:45 type of 10:45 start in the day. So I think the 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 grass cover kind of made sense because and Pakistan's bowlers, I think they were able to utilize that early morning, the relatively early morning dew that was there. I mean, Shaheen and Salman Mirza were able to make decent use of those conditions. And yeah, I mean, fits and starts, innings of fits and starts for Netherlands. I mean, small here and there contributions, be it from a Levitt or Bas the leader, Colin Ackerman, Scott Edwards as the captain, very, very fits and starts sort of combination. And then it settled into a very, very two-paced sort of a surface, I think, which is something we've started to see quite a lot of in Colombo. In Sri
Yeah,
Lanka, I think across Sri Lanka.
yeah, that's definitely true because here's what I was actually going to bring in context just Pakistan's middle over bowlers, right? The likes of Abrar Ahmed and Salman Mirza as well, in sort of ensuring that the total was still within reach. Like they were so, like precise with their line and length. Like, how would you look at that?
I mean, they were able to use. They understood the surface pretty decently. I mean, Salman Mirza, Abrar Ahmed, Sam Ayub in the middle for a over or so. Nawaz, Shadab. They kind of understood the flow of the how the surface was going to play like. So I think they were able to just adjust their lines that to suit that. To be able to suit to suit the space of the surface. So I think that is how they were able to handle the early goings, at least for that period.
Yeah, fair enough. Because to be able to restrict Netherlands to 147, because at one stage it felt like, had they let a few partnerships go on, they were looking at a total in excess of probably 160, 170 to chase. Again, let's just sort of casting our attention to Pakistan's strong power play itself, right? Somehow they just lost momentum so sharply after that. And again, it largely became a cause for concern where the middle order had a slowdown. Again, Abhinav, do you think like the batting being so not steady and just the middle order going through that sort of a slump is going to be a concern just going ahead in the tournament?
I think yes. I mean, Pakistan's underbelly is very, very. Uh, let's just say it has more than a few questions. I mean, Babar is clearly not fit for T20 cricket yet. I think God knows for what reason is he persisted with. Uh, and I think that entire middle order is a cause of concern. I mean, after Sahizada Farhan and Saim Ayub, they struggle to find any decent hitters. I mean, they uh, I mean, to quote Eddie Izzard from that film Ocean's 13, Pakistan are an analog player in a digital world. And the T20 format has just gone so far ahead into has just gone so far ahead, and then there's Pakistan who kind of play a slightly more dinosaur, more of a who are the dinosaurs of the format. I mean, in that aspect, and it wasn't until Fahim Stokes who got lucky and managed to find his timing at just the right time. I mean, he picked his moment and he picked just the right bowler. I think to be able to hit against.
Yeah, and although Pakistan had quite the forgettable batting effort there, I think it's impossible not to talk about Fahim Ashraf, right? The match-winning finish itself. Again, somewhere when you look at this now, I know it's just one off, too early to comment on it, but do you somewhere think it solves Pakistan's long-standing finishing conundrum, or does it just sort of mask the deeper issues in that batting order, which could probably again resurface as the tournament progresses?
Fahim Ashraf is like a band-aid on an open heart surgery. It's as simple as that. I don't want to make any more comments. I mean, the people who are smart enough will be able to recognize that what the meaning behind it is. It's just like putting a band-aid on an open heart surgery. I mean, issues run much deeper, and Fahim also is not the most consistent around, and Fair play to him. He managed to find his range, but yeah, I mean, it's it was basically they're a patient who are under a constant open heart surgery, and uh, I don't think any and I don't think the doctors are qualified enough to be able to diagnose what the condition is, and they're trying to use whatever sticking plasters that they can somehow try and to try and mask the
Yeah, I hope Pakistan still, finds a way around their very struggling batting unit, right? This is not just the case of the T20 World Cup and this first match itself, but probably very reflective of how they've been pre-World Cup too, right, in the T20 format. And one last bit, Abhinav, before we move on to match two itself, like when you obviously look at this match, like somewhere does it like tell you a lot about just the narrowing gap, right, between full members and these associate sides, especially in terms of like bowling discipline, game awareness, and how the game has just moved ahead so much, right, at a rapid pace.
I think it does. I mean, this format. I think T20 cricket bridges a lot of the gap between the full members and associate member nations in that aspect. I mean, the top level associate countries, not the ones at the bottom end of the barrel, but a lot of these top level T20 teams. T20 teams, nations. I mean, like a Netherlands, Scotland, and all these nations. They kind of some of their players play in a lot of these pop up T20 leagues across the globe. I mean, especially in ILT20 and also they somehow get some degree of experience in that aspect. Or if they're qualified to play in a full member nation, they often turn up in their domestic T20 tournaments as well. So I mean, it gives them a bit. I mean, it brings in that degree of experience. But yeah, I mean, uh, game situations like these can't. I mean, very often they can't be simulated, and sometimes it just happens. And I think Max stood out. I mean, he'll probably be hurting a lot more than anyone else about that drop catch. But yeah, I mean, issue things like these happen, and I mean, it's just about moving on from it and forgetting that ever happened.
Yeah, and Pakistan, obviously they did end up winning the match by 3 wickets. It was a very closely contested one, right? The fact that there were just 3 balls remaining. I mean, they will take some confidence from this win, but Netherlands, really pushed them to the brink. And I hope that Netherlands, for their sake, continue to put up performances like this, hopefully, and they end up on the winning side as well. But Abhinav, let's talk about the next match, which is West Indies versus Scotland itself, right? Another very interesting, fascinating encounter on day one. Again, what were your immediate takeaways from this Group C fixture itself, right? Like, did it reflect the gap between the two sides on paper? West Indies, for the better part of the match, were dominating, and Scotland was always, just like playing second fiddle there. But did you like sense moments where they could have capitalized and maybe done better?
I mean, look, Scotland, give them credit. They actually hung on in this game, and especially if, considering that their participation for this World Cup was confirmed barely 2 weeks before the tournament, 10 days, 2 weeks before the tournament started. So for them to be able to turn up and give a bit of a contest like this, I mean, it of course speaks volumes of cricket as such, that they were able to put in a performance like this. And But look, I mean, West Indies, they have uh, big players over there, and always manage. They were always going to manage to find a way through uh, to beat Scotland. Despite the condition. And plus, I think the Eden Gardens conditions, I think it favored the West Indies decently enough. They had the sort of, they had the bowling, they had the bowling ability to make that difference. And yes, I mean, had to have to say Shimron Hetmeyer. I think at three in the West Indies team, I think it is critical. I think he is critical because Brandon King, I don't think he's the most attacking opener around in the format. I mean, and he's been here for a long time, but I think the only reason he's hanging around is because I don't think the West Indies have uh, gotten too many options for his at his role, and I think Shai Hope has improved tremendously in the format, but yeah, I mean, he is prone to sometimes slipping into his one day mode. So having uh, an aggressive counter-attacking left-hander in that number three position, because especially after Nikki Puran's retirement, I mean, it made sense that Shimran Hetmeyer actually took the responsibility of being playing number three for them, and I think it was a great innings. Played with his uh, uh, trademark counter-attacking play. He did not let Scotland get a way into the game, and that was the most important thing. He did not let them sniff around, and I think that was able to ensure that the West Indies had a total which is always going to be good enough against a slightly underprepared Scotland team, in that, if we have to think about it. So yeah, I mean, and plus they got valuable finishing hands towards the end from both Robin Powell and Chapin Rutherford, both of whom are very experienced T20 campaigners, have played a fair bit of their cricket in India, be it touring for West Indies or in the IPL. So they know what the conditions are like. So I think they just managed to. It was always going to be easy enough for them to be able to get to a decent score and then yeah, take Scotland down.
Yeah, because when you just look at West Indies batting effort itself, right, they had quite the I wouldn't say strong power play style you'd expect, right? The Eden Garden surface itself was, I don't know, playing some very interesting games there. But again, when you just look at Shimron Hetmeyer, right? Let's take again a moment to talk about his very counter-attacking knock. Took his time to settle, and then you saw him go berserk, right? Something very characteristic of him. Do you think again that largely shifted the momentum for the West Indies and ensured the likes of Roman Powell, Sherfane Rutherford could come in later and sort of do their thing?
I think it did. I mean, of course, had a bit of a role to play. I think Eden Gardens traditionally, if we have to look at it, it's always been a very up and down sort of a surface. The ball has stuck in very very often, and it was initially it was a ground where the spinners ruled the roost. I mean, I think in the recent years when the pitches got relayed and it became much faster, and it then of course became a ground where pacers actually had a greater advantage and had much more going for them than previously. I think so. I think the pitch again played a little too pace in that aspect, and that just had the. I think it was going to help the West Indies in that aspect because they had the bowlers to be able to exploit the conditions just right in that aspect. And yes, I think with the experience they had in their batting lineup, I mean, Shimran Hetmeyer, Robin Powell, Chapin Rutherford. They're all very, very experienced campaigners, have played a lot of T20 cricket in the IPL and across the world. So they know how conditions like these work. So I think it was always going to work in their favor that they would be able to find a way through. And they did find a way through in that aspect. And uh, Hetmeyer, I think, I think, especially with Puran gone, I think he's just the perfect number three for the West Indies to have in this lineup because he's the sort of a guy who can immediately start hitting from ball one and is perfectly capable of dominating the middle overs phase for them because of his ability to hit against spinners. I mean, so that of course uh, gives them a lot more advantage in that aspect. And yes, I mean, had it been the Bangladesh, I think the contest might have been a little more trickier to predict. But I think West Indies' power, the greater degree of experience and power in West Indies' batting, I think that was always going to show up big time in the end.
And it did, right? I mean, to get to 182 was still, more than commendable effort. And here's what I want to get your thoughts on Scotland's bowling itself, right? Brad Curry was just bowling brilliantly. His celebration, sort of just giving it away. But for the rest of the bowling too, like, what did you just make of it? Did it give you the impressions of a very collective bowling effort?
I mean, here and there, I mean, Oliver Davidson, I think on his T20I debut, delivered pretty decent spell. 3 overs, 1 for 23, I think, with his left arm spin. he was effective enough. And I think even Mark Watt was relatively okay, but I think, yeah, I mean, the other bowlers, Safian Sharif and I think Michael Lees, just got taken down, especially in the counter attack that followed with Hetmeyer, Powell, and Rutherford. So yeah, I mean, experience in this format kind of matters, but yeah, I mean, uh, there's not a lot that you can fault Scotland for. I mean, the fact that they've been able to turn up at this shorter notice, and they hung in, their bowlers somehow tried to do their absolute best to keep the total down as to a manageable level. I think it is commendable in that aspect, I think, for them.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about their run chase itself, right? I think what really didn't help their cause was the fact that they lost 3 wickets, right, inside the power play itself. Again, Abhinav, how damaging do you think was that early collapse? You're chasing a stiff target of 183, and the pressure was always just going to fall, right, on the likes of Richie Barrington. You had Tom Bruce coming in later. So do you think somewhere they lost the plot there with those early wickets?
They did, I think, and I think for them, the person who actually needed to have a big game, I think, who needed to do a bigger job with the bat, I think, had to be Brandon McMullen, because in form that he's been in. I mean, he's been playing a lot of the IL T20, and he had a brilliant season, I think, with this. I think he had a very, very good time around this time around. He's been having a pretty decent time with the uh, Abu Dhabi Knight Riders, and also I think he had been in decent form for them. So I think he needed to have a big game for them, and because he's one of Scotland's best players in this format. I mean, so I think he needed to do a much better. He had to have the bigger. Needed to play a big innings in that aspect, and I think was done for just 14, trying to play a adventurous shot, because I think he was getting bogged down. At I think he was just 14 of 11, and he was trying to get a little bogged down in that aspect. I think that and that relative lack of experience that meant Romario Shepherd was able to take advantage of that and take advantage of his adventurousness. And yeah, I mean, the Scots then had to pay the price for that.
Yeah, because just talking about West Indies and the bowling effort they had, Romario Shepherd, my word, taking a hat trick, then ending up with a fifer itself. I mean, just talk to us about that spell. It was not like the great balls that were being delivered, but just Scotland getting induced and making those mistakes, right? So, how would you look at Romario Shepherd's spell and how the rest of the bowling just sort of came through, right? The likes of Jason Holder, you had Shamal Joseph as well, sort of chipping in there.
I mean, look, I mean, they have a pretty decent experienced bowling unit. I mean, experienced enough that Akil Hussain could just bowl a couple of overs, but yeah, he did get taken down in that. But yeah, Jason Holder has been on an amazing run in the T20 format, playing in franchise leagues across the world, and he's been. I think he picked up his record. I think 100 T20 wicket in the last 12 months of T20 cricket overall, and that is huge. I mean, he's been one of the informed players in the format, and of course, Romario Shepherd getting that hat trick and ending with a fifer. I mean, uh, I think he was able to take advantage of the fact that Scotland at that stage were getting desperate to try and bridge the gap and get closer to the target, and he was able to. And he's just a sort of a bowler who takes advantage of that. Batsmen trying to overcome it and overcome it to getting to big scores. And I think uh, Romario is more than is quick enough and is bustling enough to be able to take advantage of the fact to understand what lines then to bowl against those batsmen. And very often he does get hit, but yeah, I mean, I think yesterday it wasn't one of those days for him, and he had his best ever day in the format, I think, with the ball. So yeah, I mean, kudos to him. It was a well deserved hat trick in that aspect. He completely broke that essentially just shattered the chase out for Scotland. I mean, after that they were never going to be able to get close to the target. as such.
Yeah. After that, it was just mere formalities for the West Indies to finish off the match. Richie Berrington and Tom Bruce, briefly kept the chase alive, but Romario Shepherd, right? I think it was a very decisive spell for him, and hats off for that sort of a bowling effort. But yeah, Abhinav, that brings us to the next match under focus, match three, India versus USA. I think a lot of people are excited, right? The match happening at Wankhede, and just the context, right? I think the jokes were running in that this is an Aadhaar card versus green card sort of a match. And you could see, right, the Indian presence in the US
Mhm.
team itself. But first thoughts, right, again, like overall, just how do you reflect on India's performance? Especially this was a group game where things didn't perfectly go well for India. A scrappy win, but still a win that went in their way.
It's good to have a scrappy win early in the tournament, have an up and down sort of a performance early in. It was important for India to be able to have that one iffy performance early on rather than having it later on in the tournament. I think that's the case of trying to peak too early. That shouldn't be the case. And I think it was good that India was able to have that sort of a game where they needed a big performance from they needed one big performance from somebody in their batting to stand up pressure situation, and then for the bowlers to be able to do their job. And I think it wasn't the typical Wankhede wicket. It actually resembled more the test match sort of a Wankhede wicket that we've kind of seen in the last couple of occasions. I mean, the Akhada sort, a bit of the Akhada sort of a wicket that we've seen with the Wankhede. I think it was it just uh, was apparent in the way a lot of the batsmen were trying to hit through the line when the pace I think was never going to when the pace of the wicket was never going to support that sort of a hit through the line slam bang sort of a game. I think, which is why I think it just made Surya's innings that much more critical. I think he sussed the conditions out very early. He understood that this was not going to be a pitch where you can just where he could swing through the line or just use the pace of the ball and swing it to the behind square, which he often does. He had to bide his time in that aspect, which is what I think Akshat's comment also, I think, rightly said. I think he sussed the conditions out early. He understood what uh, that he uh, that it needed. He needed to play a different sort of a game, and I think it just helped him in at that helped India at that aspect to for him to be able to play a waiting game and hold the innings till the time when it was right for him to start taking the bowlers on and take and I think the last three, 4 overs is where I think he flipped the switch and went into the slightly more recognizable Suryakumar Yadav as such. But yeah, I mean, uh, as good in innings that you can ever get from your captain. And if your captain is able to turn this sort of a game first in the very first in the tournament opener for your country, I think it is a good signal for what is coming.
Yeah, definitely. And even just talking about the fact that India lost, right, those first four wickets inside the power play itself. I think for the longest time, Abhinav, although India's been doing well in T20 as right pre World Cup, there was the concern that the batting either goes big or just goes home. And I think, last night's match gave us an indicator of that sort. But before we again start digging deeper into the match itself, like what do you make of India's playing combination itself, right? Sanju Samson wasn't playing. You had Ishan Kishan open with Abhishek Sharma. Then, the rest of the batting followed with Tilak Verma. You had, uh, Shivam Dubey, Rinku, and all of them coming in. Just talk to us about like your understanding of the composition of that batting order and like, does it make sense to you? And is this like the way they'd want to go ahead for the rest of the tournament too?
I think this is the right combination now. I think Sanju had his chances. He had that entire series against New Zealand, and he did really spot with it. And I think he has nobody to blame but himself. I mean, that much has to be. We have that leeway, the rope that he had, and the support that he had. I think that is on him to perform, and he clearly didn't perform. And Ishan grabbed his chances, and how? I mean. For him to firstly be back in the setup, I mean, it was a huge surprise that he was able to return after whatever had gone into his own in the background, and for him to be able to take Jharkhand to the level that he did. I mean, brilliant performances in both the Mustaq Ali and the Vijay Hazare Trophy, and that helped him get back into the reckoning, and for him to then take his opportunities, and Tilak was injured in that during the series. I mean, that is where I think the decision was made. If Sanju is not playing, is not able to get the runs, I mean, it does make more prudent sense to ditch that right left combination, go with Ishan at the top alongside Abhishek, because they know they played a decent bit of cricket together in SRH now. So I think they know and they understand each other's game, that aspect. So yeah, I mean, it is the combination is perfect in that aspect. I don't think you could have faulted India for playing this combination. I think, and it is the best combination that India has in the format. I mean, having a deep enough batting lineup till number 8, and the power to be able to score right through. But this wasn't the sort of a deck that would allow you to score for a batsman to be able to hit from ball one. And I think that is where I think the all the batsmen apart from Suryakumar Yadav, they just failed to acknowledge and accept the conditions as such. I mean, uh, I think it was. I mean, Shivam Dubey. I don't think he really. I think he he really even got into the swing of his innings. Got a pretty good delivery first up. Rinku. I don't think he just he never ever settled in, and that is a surprise because I think Rinku is the other player apart from Tilak in this batting lineup who I feel is best suited to be a bit of a circuit breaker in a pressure situation. Somebody who can absorb a collapse and then be able to build on. I don't think that building up phase ever happened for him. I think which is a bit surprise. I don't think he was able to build up his innings from the pace that he had the slow pace that he had started out with, and even Hardik really never got into the swing of things. So I think it needed Surya had to play a proper lone hand sort of a knock to get the team up to the score that they did. So I think, yeah, I mean, in that aspect, I mean, being able to understand and accept the conditions was something that the Indian batters, I think they failed to get a grasp on.
No, aptly summarized there, but you did talk about Suryakumar Yadav, how he played an absolute blinder there, right? Started really slow and then accelerated when India sort of most needed him to. But here's where we can probably also take a moment, right, to talk about the bowling from USA, right? Although Saurabh Netravalkar just was smashed across the park for runs, the rest of the bowling, right, again, quite the commendable performance, and they can definitely take a lot of heart from it, right?
Certainly did. I think what also matters is that some of their bowlers have experience of playing in Mumbai. They've been Mumbai domestic players: Saurabh Netravalkar, Harmeet Singh, uh, Shubham Ranjane. They've all played a lot of their cricket in Mumbai and across Maharashtra, so they understand the game pretty decently, and that helped them. I think the two spinners for them, I mean, Mohsin and Harmeet, they bowled a very good commanding line. I don't think they really, and they ensured that India couldn't get away in the middle overs. And yeah, of course, the early wickets that Shadley and Sholvik was able to take, he broke the back of the middle order big time in that one triple wicket sixth over, I think, which is where in the game they were able to tighten the screws out on India. So I think it was a great. I mean, they bowled very well, and I think this with the bowling especially, they can take a lot of heart from that aspect. I mean, for that one Shubham Ranjane drop take, I think this bowling attack really has the potential to put a lot more other teams under some serious pressure. I think so. In that aspect, I think they did really well with the ball. I mean, it was just uh, a an otherworldly sort of an innings that Surya that that is able to take India through till 161, I think. But
Yeah, I
otherwise,
think
the US had nothing to feel sorry about for themselves with the ball. I think they did brilliantly with the ball. They were outstanding with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the death overs were slightly forgettable for them, but still, to restrict this very dangerous Indian batting lineup on a Wankhede surface to 161 is still massive credits there. And even in the run chase, right, at some point, it did feel like the kind of start they had was always going to make things difficult for them, right? Because at one stage they were 13 for 3. And that's where the partnership between Milind Kumar and Krishnamurti sort of steadied the chase there for a bit. Again, did you think that that phase sort of briefly opened up the game, or did you always think, yeah, India's going to claw their way back in, and this is just a very brief stand?
I think it was. I mean, after the power play, it was going to be very, very tricky for US to come back, and for them to have for them to have a good game. I think they needed Andres Hughes to actually strike big at the top, because he's actually been in form. He had a stunning ILT20. He's been playing a lot of franchise cricket in the recent past. I think he played a lot of the he played a fair bit in the CPL this time around, and yeah, he had an outstanding ILT20 this time around for the I think the Desert Vipers got 100 in one of the games as well. So it needed Henry Jesus to actually step up big in the power play. But yeah, I mean, neither he nor Saiteja or Monank were able to get into the swing of things early enough, I think, and that is where the back of their chase was broken. I mean, as much as Sanjay Krishnamurti and Milind Kumar tried to do, I mean, they were always going to be under trouble. I think they were uh, uh, never really able to take, play the ball off the spinners effectively. I think Varun had them tied down very, very effectively, and that is where the difference actually was made. I think Varun not letting them get away with it, and neither Akshar really allowed them a lot of freedom to be able to hit across. I think that is where the issue uh, was for the US. I mean, as much as Milan and Sanjay tried to resuscitate that innings, and it was a very comical dismissal for Milan as well. I mean, an absolute jack of a delivery, just split just absolutely cut him into half completely, and then he just wandered down the track and was stumped out. I mean, it was a tragicomic ending for his innings in that aspect.
Yeah, very true. And before we move on to India's bowling effort itself, I think we have a new subscriber here in Ankur. Goes on to ask us the openers should understand their roles. There's no harm in taking a couple of balls to understand the pitch. I think this is more centered towards India and how the likes of Abhishek
Yes.
Sharma and Ishan Kishan just go like berserk right every single time. So get a
I will tend to agree with Ankur. I mean, I've known him for a bit, so yeah. I mean, and he's right. I mean, it wouldn't have been a bad idea for Abhishek and Ishan Kishan to just take a bit to understand what the pitch was going to play like, and not think that this was going to be a typical Wankhede wicket, which is flatter and flat out, and you could swing through the line and hit across to all parts of the ground. So I think, yeah, I mean, it was important for the Indian openers to be able to understand what the pitch was going to be like, and then be able to attack from there. But I think, look, again, the ifs and buts don't exist in cricket, and they certainly don't exist in Abhishek Sharma's game. So yeah, I mean, it's that is how cricket and Abhishek Sharma's own thinking probably works. That he doesn't think of uh, about the ifs and buts of that come in. He just goes in his he flows in his way, and I think uh, sometimes it works out. More often than not, it works out. Sometimes it doesn't, like as we found out last night.
Yeah, and Abhishek Sharma would obviously remember this dismissal also very fondly. Like, hey, on my T20 World Cup debut, getting out in a duck, far from ideal, and hopefully it's the start of a lot of fun things for him, right? Because the home World Cup obviously comes in with a lot of pressure, but also the fact that you can perform in front of home crowds and make that impact. Again, Abhinav, just to briefly look at India's bowling effort itself, you did briefly allude to how Varun Chakrathi was brilliant, but even overall, right, it was quite the disciplined bowling performance itself. Like, what pleased you the most, right? At no point there you could sense panic there. Arshdeep Singh was bowling so well, although Bumrah was warming the bench again. Like later, Sky spoke about him being sort of ill and everything, but just the fact that the team could defend 161 under pressure against this US team that had the potential to pull off an upset.
I mean, I think experience at the end of the day just uh, you can't put a price tag on experience, and I think that is what happened for India. I think Arshdeep set the tone up with his first over. Very tight, controlled first over. Didn't let Saiteja Mukamala or Andres, who's really get going. And yeah, I mean, Siraj also playing his first T20I in over a year, in about a year and a half, and I don't think it ever looked that he was away from it as such, and that speaks to the fact that he was keeping himself match fit, and he was playing regular domestic cricket as such. And for him to be able to come out and perform in the way that he did, I think it augurs well for India that at least that they didn't have to miss Bumrah in a in a high pressure run a run chase defense like this. And I think it was his. I think it was a power play which essentially then just broke the back for the US. I think, and it was the right strategy to let uh, for both Siraj and Ashdeep to be able to bowl 3 overs up top straight out against in that game in the game last night. And because I think they had figured out the condition and they were able to make brilliant use of the late of the movement that was on offer through during that phase. And I think critical was the fact that there wasn't a lot of dew, which really helped the matters, especially for the spinners to be able to tie the US batters down. Because had there been dew, I think the result would have been a lot more different, because then I think Varun and Akshar would have had difficulties in gripping the ball, and I think then you would have Surya would have had to turn to Shivam Dubey to chip in with a over or two in that aspect, then to try and take the heat off. But yeah, I think the conditions did manage to aid India just well enough towards the end in that aspect with the lack of dew. And I think the bowlers, especially Siraj and Ashdeep, set the tone up for India to be able to defend the target. I think them getting the 3 early wickets, I think that was enough for India then to turn the screws on the US and not to let them get away with it at any point of the game.
Yeah, all fair points there, Abhinav. And almost as we reach the end of our discussion as well, do you have any last and final thoughts, like learnings and takeaways for all of these teams, that ended up on the winning side? And just as we look ahead, today we have again three exciting matches, right?
I think, yeah, I mean, the Afghans are playing. I think the group of the tournament is the same Afghanistan, Netherlands, Afghanistan, New Zealand, South Africa group. So Afghanistan and New Zealand are in action right now. I think as we speak in Chennai, and uh, that is going to be the game that will determine who amongst those three teams breaks through into the Super Eights. So I think that will be a very interesting game to watch out for. I'm intrigued to see how Nepal manages to match up against England. It'll be an interesting little game, and yeah, the Irish against Sri Lanka against Sri Lanka in at the Premdasa. It'll be interesting games as well today. But yeah, I mean, for India, I think this is a game that would have given them a good understanding uh, being able to suss out what they need to how they need to bat on a two pace wicket. I think that is the most important learning they would have picked up that a little bit more circumspection in on two pace wickets and a little more being able to just hold itself back from attacking very early on such wickets. I think it could then you it would have it can make a lot more difference in that aspect. But yeah, I mean they would certainly take a lot of heart from the from the bowling display, and so I think for the US as well, I think their bowling, I think, is something that they will take immense heart from, uh, especially how the spinners were able to bowl. And I think for them, I think the another highlight for them would have been Sanjay Krishnamurti being able. They found a bit of a middle order hitter in Sanjay Krishnamurti who can, uh, on a given day, can get going relatively quickly. So I think that is another uh, big highlight for them. And I think for the Dutch, I think it was just that. I mean, they just were caught out on a bad day with, especially. I think Logan one he just got caught in the midst of a storm. I think he's a better bowler, I think, than that. But yeah, I mean, for the Dutch, I think just holding on to the catches, I think, would be a bit would be something that they would want to do. But yeah, I mean, I think again, I don't think their bowling had anything to let them down with. I mean, as such, Aryan Dutt got them going very early, and I think Rolla van der Merwe, I think the ageless wonder, and Paul van Meekeren, I think again, interesting. I think their bowlers also for the better part of the day. I think they were able to keep the Dutch in the hunt. And for I think the West Indies, I think they might want to look at options to replace a Brandon King at the top, because I've never been personally I've never been convinced with him in the format. But I don't think a lot they need to tamper around a lot in their batting, especially because they've got a very power packed middle order as such. So I don't think there's a lot that they need to fiddle around with. So I think it's as I think they just need to carry on doing what they do. I mean, for them to have a good World Cup, I think it's important that their middle order shows up. And I think amongst the bowlers, I think especially Romario continues to chip in with big wickets, and Romario, Shepherd, and I think Jason Holder will have to shoulder a significant burden of that bowling attack. But yeah, I mean, good first intriguing first day of action in the T20 World Cup for sure.
Absolutely, Abhinav, and really well summed, right, with the takeaways there too. This is just, the starting part of the World Cup itself, but we've just had so many interesting talking points and takeaways. I'm sure, as the World Cup progresses too, right, it is going to be quite interesting. Hopefully, some unpredictable names also, sort of make the cut for the Super 8s. But for all action, guys, you can continue, subscribing, following us here on Never in the Back Foot. We will be doing a lot of these morning shows, through the entirety of the World Cup itself. But thank you so much, Abhinav, for joining me on a Sunday morning as the match is going on, discuss day one and all the proceedings that happened. Here's hoping, we will continue to have you at some point in the World Cup too. But until next time, stay safe, take care. And to all the viewers who joined in, thank you so much. And for once, catching it later, please make sure to like and comment. Cheers. Thank you so much.